Everyone, this is Leading by Teaching PowerPoint. My name is Shannon Bill, and today we'll be focusing on mental health of healthcare employees. And so today's agenda is introduction, audience, mental health and healthcare workers, goal for personal healthcare, opposite of the goal of healthcare. And then our second slide is the agenda continued, historical figure Florence Nightingale, steps to achieve goal, and conclusion. So let's get into it. So, in our introduction, we're going to explore why we feel the way we feel, mental health and turnover, and overview. And so, again, my name is Shannon Bill, and today we're going to talk about mental health of medical staff with regard to job stresses, burnout. And it's no secret that as healthcare workers, we do spend our days with patients and families. And often we run from one end of the hospital to another. Sometimes the view is that there is no appreciation, and sometimes that is coupled with poor leadership, lack of communication. It makes it difficult for the healthcare worker to flourish in that environment, and often it's labeled as toxic, leading to mental health stresses such as depression, anxiety, as well as burnout. And so it stands to reason that with stresses of being in the medical field, that there is a high turnover rate. And so there needs to be a major focus on the mental health of workers in order to not only retain those workers, but offer them a good mental space. Now, this clearly will provide an optimal outcome for not only our workers, but also for our patients ultimately. Now, today we will discuss our target audience for this presentation, mental health and healthcare workers, goal of personal health care, the opposite goal of personal health care. We're going to discuss the historical figure, Florence Nightingale, and her vision, and then steps to achieve our goal for improved mental health of our workers. And finally, we'll wrap up with a conclusion. And so audience we're going to cover target audience, why there is a need, and positive work environment. And so just to start out, Raleigh General offers an education facility for their staff, and that is where I currently work, not only for education, but for communication between members of staff to decompress. And so this is a building in which we can go to and kind of just vent a little bit, express how we feel, and then also, in essence, do like think tanks. Now, our target audience today for this PowerPoint presentation is you, the healthcare worker, and your mental health. It stands to reason that a work environment that provides an opportunity to decompress, such as Raleigh General, would offer a more positive experience for healthcare workers and ultimately the patients. So these facilities or rooms or what have you are essentially important to the healthcare worker. The target audience are healthcare workers, and they include physician, nurses, nurse practitioners, CNAs, directors, even maintenance. We can look at kitchen workers, housekeeping, and these are just to name a few. And so the need is and so the question becomes, why is there a need for this positive environment? Well, we can definitely agree that the work environment of the healthcare worker is one of stress. Often there are more patients than there are workers, and essentially understaffing is definitely an issue. And it's just one of many. And this creates a negative thought process within the healthcare workers and essentially leads to burnout. It seems like there's all of this work to do, no time to do it, and not enough staff to do it. And so we look at the positive work environment. So a positive work environment is facilitated by many different aspects. Initially, we think of a positive work environment as one that is happy and exciting to work in. But there are many elements that go into make this work environment. And so to create a work environment that is positive, there are physical elements such as running water, heat, air, conditioning, and those things also contribute to a positive work environment and our mental ability to feel like we can get tasks accomplished. And thus this creates a satisfied worker with good mental health and positive outlook on their environment and those who work within the environment. And that's Mobana and others, 2022. And so now we're going to move on to mental health and healthcare workers, overview, depression, and burnout. And so due to the stresses that we see in the medical field, it is likened into, it's likely to reason that there are many healthcare workers who are taking things like prescription drugs in order to assist them in balancing their work life. And so in some countries, we're seeing a use of 46.1% antidepressant use in healthcare workers. And in addition, 27.7% in one study took benzodiazepine. Now, then they are listed, the main reason was 50% was anxiety, 26% was insomnia, 23% was depression. Telly and others, 2022. Depression among healthcare workers often is correlated to their environment. And so what we're seeing is that one study did point out that there was an increase in clinical depression of 10,325 subjects. 3,122 subjects met the criteria and requirements for clinical depression, and that's Fond and others, 2022. And so our last aspect for this slide is burnout. When the healthcare worker is continuously exposed to stresses of a job, be it short staffing, conflict within coworkers, cliques, or scheduling, we begin to see that there are issues with burnout. And when we see burnout within a healthcare worker, we find that it can be reflected as a negative attitude or unwillingness to participate with others and coworkers within the facility. Also doing what is necessary, and often there is a company lack of empathy for both staff and patients, and individually as well as others. And so this is DHEART 2020. So now we're going to move on to goal of personal health goal. And so ultimately our target is to promote good mental health among healthcare workers, and that's our bottom line. Creates a positive work environment, allows us to offer portions of ourselves as healthcare workers to families and patients that need us, and to do so in utmost compassion and empathy. And so we're looking to improve that mental health and improve patient outcomes. First, working on ourselves, we can reflect that positive outlook and results on our patients, but we must first learn to take care of ourselves. Now, we can create and improve patient outcomes by providing kindness, connections, open communications among coworkers and with management. And we can only achieve this first by going inwardly and ensuring that we don't find ourselves in a state of burnout or in a state of depression and anxiety. We can foster emotional support in our own patients, but only if we're mentally healthy as healthcare workers. In one article, kindness, listening, and connection are key requirements for emotional support for ourselves, and the outcome is that patients who are ill will benefit from our positive mental attitude and even help in their own disease process. This is Bradshaw and others, 2022. Moving on to the opposite of the personal healthcare goal and addressing the opposite of personal healthcare goal, the negative and what will happen, we see that untreated burnout, depression, and anxiety among healthcare workers will create that negative environment continually. You'll see that there will be high turnover rates because people will not want to continue to work in an environment unless they're absolutely made to due to the state of their mental health. And so what we see also is that continued burnout, anxiety, depression among healthcare workers will cause that high turnover rate, but also we'll start to see low patient satisfaction along with poor patient outcomes. So our next slide is our historical aspect, and this is Nightingale, who is Nightingale Beliefs and Self-Reflection. And so by now we should all know who Florence Nightingale is, and she is the mother of nursing, a transformational leader in her own right. She was able to single-handedly improve mortality rates in soldiers, and that she provided care for. And so her approach was a holistic approach, embodying all aspects of care. Now, Nightingale's belief was geared toward the improvement of patient outcomes, and there is one belief that she had in particular that resonates with us in our own mental health, and it's essential for all healthcare workers and their mental health, and this is self-reflection. And so it is with self-reflection that we are able to recognize that when we are in a state of depression, burnout, or anxiety, it seems to be a most difficult task for us as healthcare workers to self-reflect and know that we find ourselves within this realm. And so Nightingale is quoted as saying, "It is a much more difficult thing to speak the truth than people commonly imagine." And that's Florence Nightingale. So self-reflection is one of the most difficult aspects, but it requires us to take a hard look look at us as individuals, our environment, and the need to take responsibility for ourselves, and to know what we need and speak up. And so our next slide is going to be steps to promote good mental health, self-reflect, transformational leaders, communication, and what to do for ourselves. And so the importance of good mental health along with healthcare workers is essential. The good mental health is a direct product of the work environment provided by and created by a facility. And this includes day-to-day interactions with coworkers and directors. Now, some steps that we can do to ensure that we are supporting our good mental health and the good mental health of other healthcare workers includes items such as self-reflection, transformational leaders that are in place, communication, and realistic workloads. The first step to contributing to good mental health among workers is self-reflection, and sometimes it's the hardest. The ability to recognize that a work environment is not healthy or does not contribute to good mental health is sometimes difficult. We often complain about it, but sometimes we don't know how to fix it. Self-reflection allows us the ability to begin to understand what it is that we need as an individual and as a coworker to create a healthcare facility that is positive. Second step is to implement the place transformational leaders among coworkers. Transformational leaders are able to provide an environment that is one of positivity and facilitate and promote communication. Huckabee 2018. Our third step, communication, is also key. We need to create an environment that has open communication where coworkers and individuals can feel free to share their opinions respectfully. Transformational leaders often are able to provide this type of environment. Again, Huckabee 2018. Now the next step is what to do for ourselves, and what we can do is in our environment is to make sure that we are taking breaks, that we are using our meal times in order for us to decompress. We need to be sure that we're taking adequate time off in order to have a good work-life balance. We need to be able to speak up concerning our workloads to our transformational leaders and let them know what our needs are. We got to let them needs be known. We need to be able to have good open communication between coworkers and management. We need to be able to speak and seek help when we need it or when we feel that we need it. Based on our own beliefs and practice and spiritual leadership in order to promote the highest outcome for ourselves and coworkers, and ultimately that spiritual leadership will also promote positive patient outcomes, and that's Huckabee 2018. And lastly, to seek help if your feelings are unresolved through appropriate channels so that you can see those changes. So now we're going to move on to conclusion. And so we covered a lot of significant information today concerning mental health of healthcare workers in today's work environment and burnout, depression, and anxiety. And it stands to reason there are many aspects as to why healthcare workers in an environment don't flourish, ultimately due to short staffing, lack of communication, suboptimal work environments, and then of course poor leadership can lead to mental health issues within a healthcare setting among workers. And it stands to reason that burnout, depression, and anxiety are found among healthcare workers in these settings. It is with self-reflection, transformational leadership, communication, and self-care that we can begin to see a new and positive work environment for ourselves, and this contributes to a positive mental environment. It's only when we implement changes across the board that and we work in these environments that we see positive outcomes, not only for ourselves, but for patients as well. We want to be able to provide top-notch care with empathy and compassion for our patients, but we have to learn to first take care of ourselves. Thank you so much.